now come to consideration of the extraordinary item that was foreshadowed by Councillor Casey under item number 8, which is to do with the Election Access Fund Bill. So if I can ask you to speak to that, Councillor, and to move the recommendation.
Sure, I'm delighted to move the recommendations, and I invite all councillors had a copy of this in the mail. It's only 5 pages long. I'll take 5 minutes just to discuss it. First of all, it's a members' bill. It's been brought by Chloe Schwarbrick, who was a mayoral candidate, who the mayor knows well, and it's brought to fill a gap in legislation. And there is a huge gap in legislation related to disability access. And it was kind of brought to the fore by Mojo Mathers, who was a Green MP last term, who was profoundly deaf. And it was the machinations of Mojo trying to access information and participate fully in Parliament that brought this to the fore in terms of a bill. Because what it does is try to make standing for election and participating in the electoral process more accessible. So more about that later. First of all, Josephine Bartley is our liaison counsel for the disability panel. This bill came through the disability panel on Monday. It's due in tomorrow with our comments. Now, David Tua said of Josephine when she was her candidacy was announced that once she starts, she never stops. Well, she's in hospital, and she went through this bill last night and the report and had a discussion and said there's no definition of disability in here. There isn't, and she's absolutely right. It needs definition by Parliament. So we've added that into the last minute thing. So Josephine's a lawyer, so it was really, really great. She should be here doing this, not me. But in her absence, I will take up the mantle. So what is it? It's to set up a fund administered by the Electoral Commission to allow resources to be released to people with a disability who want to stand for Parliament. It may release funds to political parties or to organisations who want to make their information more accessible. What does that mean? It means, as you know, every election that I've ever stood for, general or otherwise, we have complaints of inaccessibility from people with disabilities. Here, in our very chamber, we put this out to the public. Is it captioned? Is it captioned?
No.
Is it captioned? Yep. No. It's not captioned. And so, if we were doing things properly, it would be. Because then it's accessible to everybody. Just saying. So I've lost my... Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt and put you on the spot there. But people like Kim Robinson, who you know really well, he had to pay $600 last election, just last election, your election for that last election, to make sure New Zealand Sign Language interpreters were present at a Meet the Candidates forum. And that's what we've done up till now. We've told candidates that's their expense. That's not fair. Because what it does is it makes this process inaccessible. And we should be about informed decision making. And if we want people to make informed decisions, they need to be able to access all the information the way they need it. If you're not sighted, it has to be in Braille. If you can't hear, it has to be signed. And that's, in the fullness of time, we will do all this properly. This is just the first step in the process. And so the submission that we're making as a council, and we are the biggest council in the country, and we do have to tell the government this is great. It passed the first reading unanimously. I'm sure it will go straight through. There is a perceived need. The only wee amendments we made is to make sure the government looks at local body elections. Exactly the same rules apply. If we want people who have a disability to be at this table, we have to make sure their needs are met and there's no barriers to them even considering standing. It's a big ask. It's a big ask for anybody to stand and take this job, actually, as we know. But if you have an impairment of any kind, it's massive. How am I going to cope? How am I going to manage to make myself equal to the other candidates at the hustings? how am I going to get the word out to my community that might vote for me? And so this is great. It's a new process that fills a gap, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Everything's in the bill, and I can't imagine anybody, wouldn't support this. So I'm hoping for a unanimous vote of confidence in our submission going ahead. And I'd love to be able to speak to it if the government needs that.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'd like to second that amendment.
Oh,
and
Already got me.
sorry,
You can have it if you want.
Oh, I'm happy to bow to you, Councillor Newman, if you...
I need to bow to you more. Probably.
Absolutely.
You're going to hit your hands on the table.
The submission...
Too much bowing going on.
yeah, too much bowing and scraping. The submission, councillors, in front of you, it's a one-page submission. The bill, I think, is also been circulated electronically and physically. It seems to me this is something that Parliament came together to support without dissent. Deaf Action New Zealand has suggested that this is something that should also apply at the local level, and I see no reason to differentiate between central and local government assistance, and our legal team sees no reason why we should not support that extension of the bill. So it's been moved and seconded. There's an opportunity to ask questions of the proposer. If not, Daniel, you'd like to comment on it?
I would.
Councillor Newman?
Daniel's fine. I wondered, Kathy, and look, I support it. I totally support it. I actually wonder if the submission and if the mover of the submission might want to consider one amendment. In the clause 8 of the bill, it addresses the fact any payment made from the fund to a candidate or party is not to be treated as a donation. I also think that any expenses incurred under the fund should not be treated as an expense against the candidate.
I agree that too. Yeah,
And I actually think that the submission, if that could be amended to reflect that point, would be better, because what you don't want to have is a situation whereby a candidate ends up maybe getting some of the funding here, but the penalty being that the expending of the funds for the purpose of enabling participation results in them being penalised by way of them facing that as a cost against their expense returns. So I just wondered if she could agree with that, if that could be done. Thanks.
I think if we can ask you, Councillor, to make that amendment, this is a payment to compensate for a disadvantage, and you don't want to create a new disadvantage that adds to the cost of your campaign towards the required amount that you
Quite
have to
happy
keep
to
within.
craft that in the proper words that, after this, if just take.
I think Marguerite's...
We've got it listed.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good. Are there any further comments? Councillor Cooper.
Just a question, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, Councillor Casey, I do support this. When you said that somebody had to pay for a sign language interpreter, was that a candidate that had a disability?
No, the example I gave was Kim Robertson from Deaf Action Auckland, who ran there was a Meet the Candidates meeting, and he had to pay for a signer.
So will this
interpret.
address, as you say, organisations being able
it would.
to? Because,
Yes,
I mean,
it
I
would.
think, yes,
And political
absolutely, but
parties.
it's also for members of the community
Yep.
who can't participate otherwise. Okay, so that's good, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I'll
And
put the
I'd
motion.
just like to thank the disability panel for bringing this to the attention of the governing body, and that's the value of the panels, and they are completely 100% behind this. So thank you to them.
And thank you, Councillor Casey, for your enthusiasm. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried, and can we say carried unanimously? I think we can.
Brilliant.